The sharp scent of antiseptic filled the air as the glass doors of Swedish First Hill Hospital slid open without a sound. Adrian Cole stepped inside like he owned the place, his polished shoes echoing faintly against the marble floor. His Rolex caught the cold, fluorescent light as he checked the time, already irritated. Beside him, Lila Grant adjusted her hair using the reflection on her iPhone screen, her lips slightly pouted. "Adrian, I'm serious," she said, pressing a hand to her stomach. "This pain isn't normal. What if it's something serious?" Adrian barely looked at her. "You said that last week after brunch," he replied flatly, scrolling through emails on his phone. "You were fine 10 minutes later." Lila huffed, offended, but stayed close, her heels clicking sharply as they approached the private check-in desk. Everything about her, from the designer dress to the subtle scent of Dior perfume, was carefully curated. Perfect, controlled, just like the life Adrian had chosen. Then suddenly, a loud crash of wheels shattered the quiet. "Move! Clear the way!" A gurney burst through the emergency doors, nurses rushing alongside it. The energy in the room shifted instantly, urgent, chaotic, real. Adrian glanced up, annoyed at the interruption. And then he froze. The woman on the gurney was pale, drenched in sweat, her hand gripping the sheet tightly over a visibly swollen belly. Claire, his ex-wife. His breath caught in his throat as the world seemed to tilt. "No, that's not possible," he whispered under his breath. Her eyes fluttered open for a brief second and locked onto his. In that single glance, there was no surprise, no relief, only pain and something colder, resignation. The gurney rushed past him, disappearing behind swinging doors. Adrian stood there completely still, his heart pounding in a way he hadn't felt in years. Lila tugged his sleeve, confused. "Adrian, what's wrong with you? Who was that?" But he didn't answer, because his mind was already racing, piecing together a truth he wasn't ready to face. The timing, the last night, the divorce, the baby. His stomach dropped. That child might be his. Adrian didn't move. The hallway noise faded into a dull, distant hum, like he was underwater. The only thing that remained clear in his mind was Claire's face, pale, exhausted, and undeniably pregnant. It didn't make sense. It couldn't. "Adrian." Lila's voice cut through, sharper now. "You're scaring me. Who was that woman?" He blinked, forcing himself back into the moment, but his chest felt tight. "No one," he said quickly, too quickly. "Just someone I used to know?" Lila narrowed her eyes, clearly unconvinced, but before she could press further, a nurse approached and called her name. "Miss Grant, the doctor is ready for you." Lila hesitated, glancing between Adrian and the emergency doors. "You're coming, right?" Adrian opened his mouth, then closed it. "I'll be there," he muttered, but he didn't move. Lila exhaled sharply, annoyed. "Fine, don't take too long." She turned and walked off, her heels echoing down the hallway. Adrian barely noticed, because his mind was already spiraling backward. Back to the night everything ended. Rain tapped against the windows of their Seattle home. Claire had been standing in the kitchen, barefoot, wearing one of his old shirts. She looked tired that night. He remembered that now, but he hadn't cared. "I can't do this anymore," he had said, his voice cold, rehearsed. Claire had stared at him, stunned. "What are you talking about?" "This marriage," he replied. "It's not working. We're not working." The silence that followed had been suffocating. "I've been trying, Adrian," she said quietly. "Have you?" He hadn't answered, because the truth was, he had already checked out. Lila had been easier, lighter, no expectations, no history, no weight. Claire, on the other hand, had become complicated, emotional, tired. At least, that's what he told himself. "I think we should separate," he continued that night, avoiding her eyes. Claire didn't cry. That was what unsettled him the most. She just nodded slowly, like something inside her had already broken long before this moment. "Okay," she said, "if that's what you want." And just like that, it was over. Adrian dragged a hand down his face, standing in the hospital hallway, his pulse racing. He had convinced himself it was mutual, clean, simple. But now there was a child he never knew existed, a child she never told him about. And suddenly, that clean ending didn't feel clean at all. It felt like something had been buried, something he was never meant to find, until now. Adrian leaned against the cold wall, his breathing uneven as numbers began to form in his head. Sharp, relentless, unavoidable. 8 months. That's how long it had been since the divorce was finalized. But separation? That had come later. 6 months? Maybe less. His jaw tightened as the memory hit him harder this time. Not just the night he ended things, but the night that came after. The last time. It hadn't been planned. It was messy, emotional, fueled by too much whiskey and too many things left unsaid. Claire had been standing by the doorway, her eyes red but dry, her voice barely steady. "So this is it?" she had asked. He remembered shrugging, unable to face the weight of what he was doing. Then silence. Long, heavy silence. And somehow, that silence had pulled them back together for one final moment. A mistake, he had called it the next morning. A closure. Something meaningless. Adrian let out a shaky breath, his fingers curling into a fist. But it wasn't meaningless anymore. Because now, there was a child. His child. "Damn it," he muttered under his breath. His mind raced. I'm calculating timelines the way he would analyze a business deal. Dates, risks, outcomes. It all aligned too perfectly to ignore. He pushed himself off the wall, pacing now, his polished shoes moving quickly across the floor. Why didn't she tell me? The question burned. Claire wasn't manipulative. She wasn't the type to hide something like this for leverage. If anything, she had always been painfully honest, which made this worse, because it meant she had chosen silence, chosen to go through this alone. Adrian stopped walking. A new thought hit him, colder than the rest. What if it wasn't just about him? What if something else had forced her into silence? His gaze drifted back toward the emergency doors. The way she looked on that gurney. That wasn't normal labor. That was something else. Something serious. His chest tightened again, but this time it wasn't just fear. It was guilt. Raw and unfamiliar. For the first time, Adrian wasn't thinking like a CEO. He wasn't thinking about contracts, consequences, or reputation. He was thinking about a woman he had once promised forever. A woman who was now fighting for her life, without him. And a child who might enter this world without ever knowing his father was just a few feet away. Adrian swallowed hard, his voice barely audible. What have I done? Because in that moment, the truth became impossible to ignore. He hadn't just walked away from a marriage. He had walked away from something far greater. Something he could never undo. Adrian moved fast. Faster than he had in years. Faster than boardroom decisions. Faster than million-dollar deals. His steps echoed sharply as he headed straight for the double doors marked labor and delivery. He pushed through them without thinking, Sir! A nurse stepped directly into his path, her hand raised, firm but calm. You can't go in there. I need to see her, Adrian said, his voice tight. She was just brought in, Claire Whitmore. She's my… He stopped. What was she now? Ex-wife? Mother of his child? The word caught in his throat. The nurse's expression didn't change. Are you a registered family contact? Adrian hesitated for half a second. No, he admitted. Then I'm sorry, sir. You'll need to wait outside. That's not possible, he snapped, frustration bleeding through. You don't understand. I have to see her. She could be carrying my… Sir. Her tone hardened, cutting him off completely. Hospital policy. If you're not authorized, you don't go in. For a moment, Adrian just stared at her. This didn't happen to him. Doors didn't close in his face. People didn't say no. He was Adrian Cole. He built entire city blocks from the ground up. He negotiated with politicians, controlled investors, made decisions that shaped skylines. And yet, right now, he couldn't even take one more step forward. His jaw tightened. Call someone who can override that, he said, lowering his voice. I'll make it worth your time. The nurse's eyes flickered, but not in the way he expected. Not interest. Disapproval. That won't be necessary, she replied coldly. Please step back. The rejection hit harder than it should have. Adrian exhaled sharply, running a hand through his hair as he stepped back into the hallway. The doors closed again with a soft click. And just like that, she was gone from his reach. He stood there, staring at the blank surface, his reflection faintly staring back at him in the glass. For the first time in a long time, he felt small, powerless. The hallway buzzed with quiet activity, nurses moving, phones ringing, but none of it touched him. Because on the other side of that door was everything he didn't understand, everything he didn't control. A woman he had abandoned, a child he never knew, and a reality that refused to bend for him. Adrian swallowed, his voice barely a whisper. I don't even have the right… And that was the worst part. Not the fear, not the uncertainty, but the undeniable truth settling deep in his chest. He had built an empire where he could control everything, except the one life that actually mattered. Adrian stood alone in the hallway, the silence pressing in around him like a weight he couldn't shake. For the first time in years, he didn't reach for his phone to solve the problem. But old habits didn't disappear that easily. Within seconds, his hand moved on instinct, dialing the one person who always had answers. Ethan, Adrian said the moment the call connected. I need information. Now. His lawyer didn't hesitate. What happened? Adrian lowered his voice, glancing toward the closed doors. Claire's here. Emergency. She's pregnant. There was a brief pause on the other end. Is it yours? I don't know, Adrian admitted, his jaw tightening. But the timing… Then you assume it is, Ethan cut in calmly. Until proven otherwise. Adrian exhaled sharply. What does that mean? It means, Ethan replied, his tone shifting into something colder, more precise. You're no longer dealing with just a personal issue. This is legal exposure. Adrian frowned. Legal exposure? If that child is yours, you're responsible, financially, legally, publicly. Child support alone, given your net worth, will be substantial. And if this gets out… Ethan didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. Adrian could already see the headlines. Billionaire CEO abandons pregnant ex-wife. His grip tightened around the phone. I can handle money, Adrian said, his voice low. That's not the problem. No, Ethan replied. Your reputation is. Before Adrian could respond, another voice entered the conversation. Well, this is unexpected. Adrian turned sharply. Standing a few feet away was Victor Grant, perfectly tailored suit, silver hair, calm, calculating eyes. Lila's father, Adrian's biggest investor. What are you doing here? Adrian asked, his voice hardening. Victor stepped closer, his expression unreadable. Lila called me. Said something about you disappearing in a hospital. His gaze shifted briefly toward the maternity ward doors. And now I see why. Adrian ended the call slowly, tension rising in his chest. Victor studied him for a moment, then spoke in a quiet, measured tone. If that woman is carrying your child, you have a problem. Adrian didn't answer. Victor's lips curved slightly, not a smile, but something colder. A very expensive problem, he continued. And more importantly, an inconvenient one. Adrian's eyes narrowed. What are you implying? Victor stepped closer, lowering his voice. I'm implying, he said smoothly, that some situations are better handled quietly. The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning, and for the first time, Adrian felt something colder than fear settle in his chest. Because this wasn't just about a child anymore. This was about power, control, and a man who clearly had no intention of letting this situation exist. Claire hadn't planned to survive. That was the truth she never said out loud. The memory came back in fragments, quiet, ordinary moments that now felt unbearably heavy. A small bathroom, dim light, a trembling hand holding a pregnancy test. 2 lines. Claire had stared at them for a long time, her reflection pale in the mirror. Just days before, she had signed the final divorce papers. Adrian's name, once hers, now erased cleanly from her life, or so she thought. Her first instinct had been to call him. Her phone had been right there on the counter, his name still saved under home. She had even picked it up, but something stopped her. Not anger, not pride, something deeper, a quiet understanding. He had already left. Calling him wouldn't bring him back, not in the way that mattered. So she put the phone down and chose silence. A week later, everything changed again. The doctor's office smelled sterile, too bright, too clean. Claire sat alone, hands folded tightly in her lap as Dr. Hannah Brooks studied the results in front of her. There was a pause. Too long. Claire, the doctor said gently, we need to talk about your heart. Claire frowned slightly. What do you mean? Dr. Brooks hesitated, then spoke carefully. You have a condition called peripartum cardiomyopathy. It's rare, but serious. Your heart isn't pumping the way it should. Claire's stomach dropped. And the baby? She asked quietly. The doctor met her eyes. That's the problem. Silence filled the room. If you continue this pregnancy, Dr. Brooks continued, there is a real risk you may not survive it. Claire didn't respond immediately. The words didn't feel real, not yet. So, what are you saying? She finally asked. I'm saying, the doctor said softly, you need to consider all your options. Claire knew exactly what that meant. Her hand moved instinctively to her stomach. There was nothing there yet. No movement, no sign of life. But it was enough. I'm keeping the baby, she said. Dr. Brooks' expression tightened. Claire, I'm keeping him, she repeated, more firmly this time. The room went quiet again. Fear settled deep in her chest. Not panic, not hysteria, just a quiet, steady fear, the kind you learn to carry. From that moment on, Claire fought alone. Doctor visits, medication, sleepless nights where every heartbeat felt uncertain. Every day was a risk, every breath a question, and through it all, she never called Adrian because this wasn't a life she wanted to beg him to return to. This was a life she chose, even if it meant losing her own. The hardest part wasn't the pain. It wasn't the doctor visits, or the nights Claire woke up gasping for air, her chest tight, her heart beating too fast or too slow. It wasn't even the fear of dying before she ever got to hold her child. The hardest part was choosing to stay silent. People would have called it pride. They would have said she should have told Adrian, that he had a right to know. Maybe he did. But Claire knew Adrian better than anyone. She knew exactly what would happen. He would come back. Not because he loved her, not because he missed her, but because he would feel responsible. And that was something Claire refused to accept. She had seen the way he looked at her in those final months of their marriage, like she was something heavy, something slowing him down, like she no longer fit into the future he was building. She wouldn't become that again. Not for him, not for anyone. So she built a different life, a smaller one, a quieter one. Her apartment wasn't anything like the home she once shared with Adrian. No glass walls, no skyline views, no luxury furniture, just a modest space with soft light, secondhand furniture, and a small kitchen that always smelled faintly of tea. But it was hers. Every morning, she followed the same routine: medication, blood pressure checks, careful breathing. She learned to move slowly, to conserve energy, to listen to her body in a way she never had before. Some days were easier, others weren't. There were moments when the fear crept in, late at night, when everything was quiet and her thoughts had nowhere to hide. What if I don't make it? What happens to him? Her hand would rest on her stomach, holding on to something she couldn't yet see, but already loved more than anything. "You're going to be okay," she would whisper, even when she wasn't sure if she believed it. Because he deserved that. Hope, not fear. Claire didn't need Adrian's money. She didn't need his name. And she definitely didn't need his pity. What she needed, what her child needed, was a life built on something real. Not obligation, not guilt. Love. Even if it came from just one person. She had made her choice the day she put the phone down, and she never picked it up again. Not when the symptoms got worse. Not when the doctor warned her again. Not even when the loneliness became unbearable. Because once you choose dignity, you don't go back, even if it costs you everything. The room was dim, quiet except for the steady rhythm of a heart monitor. Adrian hesitated at the door before stepping inside. For the first time in his life, he felt like he didn't belong in a space. Claire lay against the pillows, her skin pale, her breathing slow but controlled. The strength he remembered in her wasn't gone, but it had changed. Sharper, colder. Her eyes shifted toward him the moment he entered. No surprise, no warmth, just recognition. "You shouldn't be here," she said, her voice weak but steady. Adrian swallowed, taking a cautious step forward. "Claire?" Hearing her name on his lips felt wrong, like something that didn't belong to him anymore. "I saw you," he continued, his voice tight. "They rushed you in. No one would tell me anything. I didn't know." "You didn't know?" She cut in softly. The words weren't loud, but they hit harder than anything else. Adrian stopped moving. Claire let out a slow breath, her eyes never leaving his. "That's interesting," she said, "because there was a time when you didn't want to know anything about me." "That's not fair," he said quickly. Her expression didn't change. "No," she replied. "You walked away, Adrian. You made it very clear you didn't want to be part of my life anymore." A silence settled between them. Heavy, unavoidable. Adrian glanced toward the empty bassinet in the corner of the room. His chest tightened. "The baby," he started, his voice lowering. Is it?" "Yes." She didn't let him finish. It wasn't hesitation. It wasn't uncertainty. It was final. Claire held his gaze as she spoke again, slower this time. "He's yours." The words landed like a blow. Adrian's hand gripped the edge of the bed for balance, his mind struggling to catch up with what he was hearing. A son. He had a son. "You should have told me," he said, his voice rough. "I had a right to know." Claire's lips pressed together, something flickering behind her eyes. "A right?" she repeated quietly. Then, after a beat, "I had a right to protect myself." Adrian frowned, confused. "From me?" "Yes." The answer came without hesitation. From the truth. From the version of him she had already accepted. "You don't get to walk back into this," she continued, her voice gaining strength despite her condition. "You don't get to decide now that you want to be involved." Adrian stepped closer, desperation creeping in. "This is my child, Claire. That means something." "It means everything," she said. Her gaze hardened. "But not to you." The silence that followed was sharp, unforgiving. And for the first time, Adrian realized this wasn't a conversation he could control. Because Claire wasn't asking for anything. She wasn't hoping. She wasn't waiting. She had already learned how to live without him. And she had no intention of going back. The tension in the room hadn't settled. It thickened, sharpened. And then, the door swung open. "Adrian, what is going on?" Lila's voice cut through the air like glass. Both of them turned. She stood at the doorway, perfectly composed at first glance. Designer coat, flawless makeup. But her eyes were searching, were sharp, already sensing something was wrong. Her gaze landed on Claire. Then the hospital bed, then the empty bassinet, and finally, back to Adrian. "Who is she?" Lila asked, her tone dangerously calm. Adrian opened his mouth, but nothing came out. For the first time, words failed him. Claire didn't hesitate. "I'm his ex-wife," she said quietly. Lila blinked. Once. Then her eyes dropped to Claire's stomach, to the curve that was no longer hidden. Understanding hit instantly. Her expression didn't soften. It hardened. "Oh," she said slowly. "That explains a lot." Adrian stepped forward. "Lila, listen." "No," she snapped, holding up a hand. "I think I finally am." She let out a short, humorless laugh, pacing a few steps into the room. "So, this is why you disappeared? Not work, not stress." Her eyes flicked back to Claire. "A baby." Claire said nothing. She didn't need to. Lila turned back to Adrian, her voice dropping lower. "How long were you planning to hide this?" "I didn't know," Adrian said quickly. "I just found out." "Do you think I'm stupid?" Lila interrupted. Her calm was gone now. Cracking. "You expect me to believe that your ex-wife just shows up pregnant out of nowhere and you had no idea?" Adrian's jaw tightened. That's exactly what happened. But even he could hear how weak it sounded. Lila stared at him for a long moment. Then something shifted. Not heartbreak, not pain. Calculation. "You lied to me," she said quietly. "All this time, you let me build a future with you." She stepped closer. "But you already had one." Adrian shook his head. "Lila, this changes things. I need time to—" "No." Her voice was sharp again, final. "You don't get time." She pointed toward the door, then back at Claire. "You choose," she said. The room went completely still. Adrian froze. Lila's eyes locked onto his, unwavering. "You walk out of this hospital with me," she continued slowly, "and we forget this ever happened." Her gaze flicked toward Claire, cold and dismissive. "Or you stay here and deal with whatever this is." Silence stretched, heavy, unforgiving. Adrian looked at Lila, then at Claire, then back again. For the first time in his life, he didn't know which decision would cost him more, and that terrified him. The silence stretched so long it became unbearable. Adrian stood frozen between two lives, one built on power and image, the other raw, uncertain, and painfully real. "Adrian," Lila said again, her voice quieter now, but far more dangerous. "I'm not repeating myself." Claire didn't speak. She simply watched him, not with hope, not with fear, but with a quiet certainty that told him everything he needed to know. She wasn't expecting him to stay. That realization hit harder than anything else. Adrian swallowed, his throat dry. "Lila, this isn't something I can just walk away from." Her eyes flickered, just for a second, then hardened again. "So, that's your answer?" she asked. "I didn't say that," he replied quickly. "I just need time to think. This is complicated." "It's not complicated," Lila snapped. "It's simple." She took a step closer, her heels clicking sharply against the floor. "It's me? Or them?" The word them hung in the air. Claire and the child, reduced to a problem, an inconvenience. Adrian's jaw tightened. "You don't get to talk about them like that." Lila let out a sharp laugh. "Them?" she repeated. "You mean the woman you left? The one you said was holding you back?" Her words cut deep because they were true. Things he had said. Things he couldn't take back. "You made your choice once already," Lila continued, her voice rising. "Don't pretend like this is suddenly difficult." Adrian looked away. Because it was difficult now. Because everything felt different. Because the version of himself that made that decision didn't feel as solid anymore. "I'm not leaving," he said finally. The words came out low, but firm. The room went still. Lila stared at him, her expression unreadable at first. Then slowly, something inside her shifted. Not sadness, not heartbreak. Something colder, more dangerous. "I see," she said quietly. She reached for her handbag, unclasping it with slow, deliberate movements. The tension in the room tightened with every second. "You're choosing this," she said, gesturing faintly toward Claire. "Over everything we built." Adrian didn't respond. He didn't need to. His silence said enough. Lila nodded once, as if confirming something to herself. Then she smiled. But it wasn't warm. It wasn't hurt. It was calculated. "You just made the biggest mistake of your life," she said softly. A chill ran through Adrian's chest. Because in that moment, he realized something he hadn't before. Lila wasn't the kind of person who walked away quietly, and whatever came next wouldn't end here. The door closed behind Lila with a quiet click. But the tension she left behind didn't fade. It lingered, heavy, suffocating, unavoidable. Adrian stood there, still facing the empty doorway, as if expecting her to come back, to say something else, to undo what had just happened. She didn't. "She won't let this go." The voice came from behind him. Adrian turned. Eleanor Whitmore stood near the window, her posture straight despite the exhaustion in her eyes. She had been silent until now, watching everything unfold. Now, there was nothing quiet about her presence. "I didn't expect her to," Adrian replied, his voice low. Eleanor studied him for a long moment. Then she stepped closer. "You still don't understand, do you?" she said. Adrian frowned slightly. "Understand what?" Her expression hardened, not angry, but deeply disappointed. "What my daughter went through?" she said. The words landed heavier than any accusation. Adrian opened his mouth, but nothing came out, because he didn't know. "Not really." Eleanor let out a slow breath, as if deciding how much to say. "Claire found out she was pregnant 2 days after you filed for divorce," she began. Adrian's chest tightened. "She found out about her heart condition a week later." His eyes snapped up. "What?" Eleanor didn't soften. "Her heart was failing," she said plainly. "The doctors told her carrying that baby could kill her." The room went completely still. Adrian felt the ground shift beneath him. "That's not—" he started, but the words died in his throat, because Eleanor wasn't guessing. She was telling the truth. "She had options," Eleanor continued quietly. "Safer ones, easier ones." Her gaze met his directly. "She refused all of them." Adrian's hands curled into fists. "Why didn't she tell me?" The question came out raw, desperate. Eleanor's eyes didn't waver. "Because she knew exactly what you would do." He froze. "You would come back," she said. "Not for her, not because you loved her, but because you would feel obligated." The words cut deep, because they were true. "You would stay out of guilt," Eleanor added. "And every day, she would have to look at you and wonder if you resented her for it." Adrian looked away, unable to hold her gaze. "She chose dignity instead," Eleanor said softly. "Even if it meant doing it alone?" Silence filled the room, thick, unforgiving. And for the first time, Adrian understood the full weight of what he had done. Not just leaving, but who he had left behind. Adrian didn't speak. He couldn't. Eleanor's words echoed in his head, each one heavier than the last. The truth wasn't just painful, it was precise. It exposed him in a way nothing ever had. But before he could respond, a soft knock came at the door. Dr. Hannah Brooks stepped inside, her expression composed but serious. She glanced between Claire, Eleanor, and Adrian, clearly aware of the tension in the room. "I need to speak with you," she said, her eyes settling on Adrian. Eleanor frowned. "About what?" Dr. Brooks hesitated. "About something that shouldn't have happened." The room shifted instantly. Adrian straightened. "What do you mean?" Dr. Brooks closed the door behind her before answering. "I received a call earlier today," she said carefully. "From someone asking about Claire's condition." Eleanor's expression tightened. "That's not unusual. Hospitals get calls all the time." "This wasn't a general inquiry," Dr. Brooks replied. "They asked specific questions. About her heart, about the risks, about intervention options." Claire's fingers tightened slightly against the blanket. Adrian's eyes narrowed. "Who?" Dr. Brooks looked at him directly. "They didn't give a name," she said. "But they mentioned legal authority, financial coverage, and they were very interested in whether Claire would be considered medically unstable to make decisions." The words hit like a shockwave. Eleanor stepped forward. "Are you saying someone was trying to override her choices?" Dr. Brooks didn't answer immediately. She didn't need to. Adrian felt something cold settle in his chest. Victor. The realization came instantly. The calm tone. The quiet suggestion earlier. Some situations are better handled quietly. This wasn't about money. This was control. "They wanted to know," Dr. Brooks continued, her voice firm now, "if there was any legal pathway to intervene, in case the pregnancy posed a significant risk." Claire's breathing shifted slightly, but she didn't speak. Adrian did. "Can they do that?" he asked, his voice low but tense. "No," Dr. Brooks replied immediately. "Not without her consent, and not without a court order, which they don't have." Eleanor exhaled sharply, anger flashing across her face. "This is insane." "No," Adrian said quietly, his gaze darkened. "It's calculated. For the first time. This wasn't just about guilt anymore, or regret. This was something else, something bigger. Because someone out there wasn't just trying to control the situation. They were trying to control Claire and her child." Adrian stepped out into the hallway, his mind no longer clouded by confusion. Now, it was sharp, focused, dangerous. He pulled out his phone and dialed immediately. "Ethan," he said the second the line connected, "I need you to look into Victor Grant. Every call he's made in the last 24 hours, especially anything tied to the hospital." There was a pause. "Adrian, what's going on?" "He crossed a line," Adrian replied coldly. "And I want proof." He ended the call before Ethan could ask more. For the first time since this started, Adrian wasn't reacting. He was moving. But before he could take another step, his phone rang again. Unknown number. He answered anyway. "Mr. Cole," a calm voice greeted. "This is Daniel Reeves from Northbridge Capital." Adrian frowned. "Yes?" "I'm calling regarding the Bellevue project," Daniel continued. "We're withdrawing our funding, effective immediately." Adrian went still. "That's not possible," he said sharply. "We just finalized—" "That was before this morning," Daniel interrupted. A cold realization crept in. "What changed?" Adrian asked, though he already knew. There was a brief hesitation. Then, "We received information that raises concerns about your personal conduct," Daniel said carefully. "Given the potential public exposure, our board has decided to step back." Adrian's grip tightened around the phone. "Let me guess," he said quietly. "It came from Victor Grant." No response. That was answer enough. "We wish you the best moving forward," Daniel added, "but we can't be associated with this risk." The line went dead. Adrian lowered the phone slowly, his mind racing. That project wasn't just another deal. It was everything. $800 million. Years of work. Gone. Just like that. He let out a slow breath, staring down at his reflection in the dark glass window beside him. This wasn't coincidence. This was retaliation. Victor wasn't just protecting his daughter. He was sending a message. Choose wrong, and you lose everything. Adrian closed his eyes briefly. He could fix this. He knew he could. One call, one apology, one compromise. All it would take was walking away from Claire, from the child, from this entire situation. His phone remained still in his hand. The option was right there. Easy, clean, familiar. But for the first time, it didn't feel right. Adrian opened his eyes again, something shifting deep inside him. Because now he understood the real cost. Not money, not reputation, but the person he would become if he walked away again. And that was something he could never afford. Adrian didn't go back to the penthouse that night. For the first time in years, the idea of standing in front of floor-to-ceiling glass, overlooking the Seattle skyline, felt empty, hollow. Instead, he sat in his car, engine off, hands still gripping the wheel. The world he had built was cracking, and he could feel it. But for once, he didn't reach for control. He reached for something else. Responsibility. The next morning, Adrian walked into his office wearing the same suit from the night before. No sleep, no polish. His assistant froze when she saw him. "Mr. Cole," The North Bridge withdrawal? I know, he cut in calmly. Cancel all investor meetings today. She hesitated. But the board? I said cancel them. There was something different in his voice. Not anger, not pressure. Finality. He stepped into his office, Ma closing the door behind him, and stared at the city below. For years, this view had meant power. Now it just reminded him of everything he was about to lose. His phone buzzed. Ethan. They're not just pulling funding, his lawyer said. Victor's pushing other investors to back out too. This could collapse everything. Adrian listened quietly. I want you to prepare for asset liquidation, he said after a moment. Silence. Adrian, Ethan replied carefully. If you do that, you're cutting your own legs out from under you. I know. Then why? Because I'm done pretending this is just business. The words felt unfamiliar, but right. Adrian ended the call and leaned back in his chair, exhaling slowly. For the first time, he wasn't thinking about saving his empire. He was thinking about what mattered after it fell. That afternoon, he didn't go to a meeting. He went somewhere else. A quiet store on the edge of the city. Bright lights, simple shelves. Nothing like the world he was used to. He walked through the aisles slowly, uncertain, out of place. Then he started filling a cart. Diapers, bottles, blankets, small things, necessary things, things he had never once thought about before. At checkout, the cashier gave him a polite smile. First time? She asked casually. Adrian paused, then nodded. Yeah, he said quietly. As he carried the bags out to his car, something inside him shifted again. This wasn't grand. It wasn't impressive. No headlines, no recognition. Just small, quiet choices. But for the first time in a long time, they felt real. And somehow, that mattered more than everything he was about to lose. The apartment was too quiet. Adrian stood in the middle of the living room, staring at the small bundle in his arms like it was something fragile, something unreal. Noah, his son. The baby shifted slightly, letting out a soft, restless sound, his tiny face scrunching as if the world itself was too much. Adrian froze. Hey, he whispered awkwardly, adjusting his grip. He had never done this before, never held something that depended on him so completely. Margaret had handed Noah over just an hour ago, her eyes tired but firm. She needs rest, she had said, and I can't be in two places at once. So now, it was just him, and the child he had almost never known existed. Noah began to cry, not loud at first, just a small, uncertain sound. But within seconds, it grew, louder, sharper, filling the entire apartment. Adrian's chest tightened. Okay, I got it, he muttered, pacing slightly. You're fine, you're okay. But Noah wasn't okay, and Adrian had no idea what he was doing. He tried everything he could think of, rocking, shushing, walking back and forth across the room. Nothing worked. The crying only got worse. It echoed in his ears, in his chest, in places he didn't know could hurt like this. Panic crept in. Not the kind he felt in business. This was different. This was helpless. I'm trying, he said under his breath, almost pleading. I don't know what you need. Noah cried harder. Adrian stopped moving. His shoulders dropped slightly as something inside him gave way. All the control, all the certainty, gone. I'm sorry, he whispered, not to the baby, not entirely, to everything, to Claire, to the life he walked away from, to this moment he didn't deserve. Noah's cries softened slightly, like he could hear something deeper than words. Adrian shifted him gently against his chest, resting his chin lightly against the baby's head. And without thinking, he began to hum. It was quiet, unsteady, an old tune he barely remembered from childhood. Simple, repetitive, but real. Slowly, the crying eased. Noah's breathing steadied, his small body relaxing against Adrian like he finally felt something safe. Adrian sank onto the couch, holding him close, afraid to move. Minutes passed, or maybe longer. He didn't check. He didn't care. Because for the first time in years, he wasn't thinking about what came next. He wasn't calculating outcomes. He wasn't trying to control anything. He was just there, present. And as Noah fell asleep in his arms, Adrian closed his eyes, his chest tightening with something unfamiliar. Not guilt, not fear, something deeper, something quieter, something that felt like the beginning of a man he didn't recognize, but maybe needed to become. The call came just before dawn. Adrian was still on the couch, half awake, Noah sleeping against his chest, when his phone vibrated sharply in his hand. Margaret. His heart dropped instantly. He answered before the second ring. Margaret. Her voice came through, tight and shaking. It's Claire. Everything inside him went still. What happened? He asked, already standing, carefully lifting Noah into one arm. She collapsed, Margaret said. They rushed her back to the hospital. Her heart. Adrian, it's not stable. The words hit like a punch. I'm on my way, he said, already moving. He didn't think, didn't hesitate. He grabbed the diaper bag, keys, everything within reach, and rushed out the door with Noah held close against him. The drive felt endless. Red lights blurred, the city still dark, quiet, but his mind was anything but. By the time he reached the hospital, his chest felt tight again. Not fear, something heavier. He pushed through the doors, barely slowing as he reached the front desk. Claire Whitmore, he said, breathless. Where is she? The nurse glanced up, recognizing the urgency. Cardiac ICU, she said. Second floor. Adrian didn't wait. Minutes later, he stood outside another set of doors, different from before. More serious, more final. Through the glass, he could see movement, machines, nurses, controlled chaos, and in the middle of it, Claire, pale, still, surrounded by monitors that beeped in slow, steady rhythms. Adrian's grip tightened around Noah. She asked for him. Margaret's voice came from behind him. He turned. Her eyes were red, exhausted, but steady. She was conscious for a moment, Margaret continued. She didn't ask for me. A pause. She asked for you. The words hit harder than anything else that night. Adrian looked back through the glass. At Claire? At the woman who had fought everything alone? At the woman who never called him, and somehow still called for him now. A nurse stepped out. Family only, she said gently. Adrian hesitated, then looked down at Noah, then back at Claire. I'm his father, he said quietly. The nurse studied him for a second, then nodded. Inside, the room felt colder. Machines surrounded Claire, their steady sounds filling the silence. Adrian stepped closer, his voice barely above a whisper. I'm here. Her eyes fluttered open slowly, weak, but aware. She looked at him, then at Noah, and for the first time, something in her expression softened. Relief, not because he saved her, not because he deserved it, but because, in that moment, she wasn't alone anymore. The ICU room was quiet again. Too quiet. Claire lay still, the machines doing their work, her breathing shallow but steady. Noah rested in Adrian's arms, unusually calm, as if he understood this moment mattered. Adrian didn't move, didn't speak. He just stood there, watching her. Then, the door opened. Dr. Hannah Brooks stepped in, her expression different this time. Not just concern, something else. "Mr. Cole?" she said, her tone firm. "I need a moment with you." Adrian nodded, carefully handing Noah to Margaret before stepping outside. The hallway felt colder now, more serious. "What is it?" he asked. Dr. Brooks didn't hesitate. "We found something." Adrian's stomach tightened. "What kind of something?" She held his gaze. "Someone accessed Claire's medical file without authorization." The words landed heavy. Adrian's jaw clenched. "Who?" "We're still confirming," she said, "but the access came from an external request tied to a legal inquiry." Adrian didn't need more. Victor. "This isn't just about curiosity," Dr. Brooks continued. "There were notes, questions about her condition, her decision-making capacity." Adrian's eyes darkened. "They were trying to prove she's not stable." "Yes," Dr. Brooks said. "If someone could argue she wasn't mentally or physically capable of making decisions, they could attempt legal intervention." Adrian felt something shift inside him. Not fear, not confusion, anger, cold, focused. "They wanted control," he said quietly. Dr. Brooks nodded. "And possibly custody implications, if the child is involved." Adrian looked back through the glass at Claire, at everything she had fought alone. And now, someone was still trying to take that away from her. His voice dropped, steady but sharp. "Do you have proof?" "Not enough yet," she admitted. "But we're documenting everything." "That's enough to start," Adrian said. He pulled out his phone immediately. This time, there was no hesitation, no uncertainty. "Ethan," he said as soon as the call connected, "I need you to open a full investigation. Medical access logs, legal inquiries, everything tied to Victor Grant." Ethan's tone shifted instantly. "Adrian, this is serious." "I know," he replied. That's why we're not handling it quietly." He ended the call and looked back at Dr. Brooks. "This stops now," he said. For the first time, Adrian wasn't just reacting to the damage. He was stepping into it, standing between Claire and everything that threatened her. And this time, he wasn't walking away. The fallout didn't take long. By the next morning, everything began to unravel. Adrian stood in his office, not the towering glass penthouse he once owned, but a smaller, quieter space that reflected the life he had stepped into. His phone buzzed nonstop, emails flooding in faster than he could read them. Ethan's message sat at the top. "We have confirmation. It's Victor." Adrian's jaw tightened as he opened the attached report. Timestamps, access logs, legal requests masked under third-party firms. It was all there, clear, undeniable. And Victor Grant hadn't just tried to interfere. He had orchestrated it. And now, there was proof. Adrian didn't hesitate. "Release it," he said into the phone. Ethan paused. "Are you sure? This will go public, completely." "That's the point," Adrian replied coldly. Hours later, the story broke. Not as gossip, not as speculation, but as fact. Unauthorized access to a private patient's medical records, attempted legal manipulation, corporate coercion. Victor Grant's name spread across every major outlet. And this time, money couldn't bury it. By afternoon, the consequences hit hard. Regulatory investigations opened. Business partners distanced themselves. Contracts were suspended. And then, the final blow. Adrian watched the live financial feed on his screen as Grant Holdings stock began to drop. Fast, sharp, unforgiving. It didn't stop. Across the city, Victor sat in his office, surrounded by ringing phones and unanswered calls. For the first time in decades, he wasn't in control. Meanwhile, Lila's world collapsed just as quickly. Her name was dragged into the story, not as a victim, but as part of the system that enabled it. Brand deals disappeared overnight. Invitations vanished. Her carefully curated image, gone. Adrian stood quietly, watching it all unfold. No satisfaction, no triumph. Just balance. Because this wasn't revenge, it was consequence. Later that evening, he returned to the hospital. The air felt different now. Calmer, cleaner. Like something toxic had been removed. Claire was still resting, her condition stable for the first time in days. Margaret gave him a long look as he stepped inside. "It's over," Adrian said simply. She studied him carefully, then nodded once. Not forgiveness, not approval, but acknowledgement. Adrian stepped closer to Claire's bedside, watching her breathe. Steady, alive, and for the first time, untouched by the people who tried to control her. Because the truth had done what power never could. It had set everything right, and this time, no one could take that away again. The house felt different now, warmer, quieter in a way that no longer felt empty. Sunlight filtered through the curtains, soft and steady, landing across the wooden floor where Noah sat, surrounded by scattered blocks. His small hands worked carefully, stacking them with determined focus before knocking them down with a delighted laugh. Life. Simple, uncomplicated, real. Claire watched from the couch, a blanket draped over her shoulders, a cup of tea resting between her hands. Her breathing was steady now. Not perfect, but stronger. Stronger than it had been in months. Dr. Brooks had called it progress. Claire called it survival. Behind her, the door opened quietly. Adrian stepped in, carrying a small grocery bag, careful not to make too much noise. He had learned that. The small things, the quiet moments, they mattered now. "You're back early," Claire said, glancing at him. Her voice was softer these days. Not weak, just calm. Adrian nodded, setting the bag on the counter. Meeting got canceled. That was the truth, but not the whole truth. Most meetings didn't happen anymore, not the way they used to. His world had changed, and he had let it. Noah spotted him and immediately lit up. "Da!" he babbled, reaching forward. Adrian smiled, a real smile this time, and walked over, crouching down beside him. "Hey, buddy," he said softly, picking him up with ease now. No hesitation, no uncertainty, just familiarity. Claire watched them quietly. There was no dramatic shift, no sudden forgiveness. But there was something else, something quieter. Trust, not fully formed, not complete, but growing. "You didn't have to come back today," she said after a moment. Adrian looked at her. "I wanted to," he replied simply. That was the difference now. He didn't show up out of obligation or guilt. He showed up because he chose to. Every time. Claire held his gaze for a second longer, then nodded slightly. Not a grand gesture, but enough. Enough to say she saw it. Enough to say it mattered. Outside, the world kept moving. Deals, headlines, reputations, they all continued without him. But inside this space, none of that mattered. Because here, there was no image to maintain. No power to protect. Just three people, learning how to exist together. Slowly, carefully, honestly. And for the first time, Claire didn't feel like she was fighting to survive. She felt like she was beginning again. Not as who she used to be, but as someone stronger. Someone who had lost everything and still found a way to build something real. 1 year later, The air carried the soft scent of spring as sunlight spilled across the small backyard. Wind brushed gently through the trees, and laughter, bright, unfiltered laughter, filled the space. Noah ran across the grass on unsteady legs, chasing a red ball that was just slightly too big for him. His steps were clumsy, his balance uncertain, but his joy unshaken. "Careful," Claire called out, a smile touching her lips. She stood near the porch, one hand resting lightly against the railing. Her posture was different now, stronger. Her movements no longer carried the quiet hesitation they once did. Her heart still needed care, but it was no longer failing. It was living. Behind her, Adrian stepped outside, 2 cups of coffee in hand. He handed one to her without a word. She took it. "Thank you," she said. Simple, natural. He nodded, leaning beside her, both of them watching Noah play. There was no tension between them now, but there was no illusion either. Everything that had happened still existed. Nothing had been erased, only understood. "I spoke with the cardiology team this morning," Claire said after a moment. "They want me to share my story, help other women going through the same thing." Adrian glanced at her. "You should." She looked at him, studying his face carefully. The man beside her wasn't the same one who had walked away. That version was gone, not forgotten, but gone. "I think I will," she said softly. A quiet pause settled between them. Then, "There's something else," Adrian added. Claire raised an eyebrow slightly. "I'm not asking you to forget anything," he said, "and I'm not asking for things to go back to the way they were." His voice was steady, honest. "I just want to keep building this, whatever this is, with you, with him." Claire didn't answer immediately. She looked back at Noah, watching him laugh as he fell onto the grass, completely unharmed, completely free. Then she turned back to Adrian. "I don't trust who you used to be," she said. He nodded. "I know. But," she continued, her voice softer now, "I see who you are now." That was the difference. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But something just as powerful. A chance. Claire reached out slowly, her hand resting over his. Not tight, not permanent, but real, and for the first time. That was enough. Because this wasn't a perfect ending. It wasn't a fairy tale. It was something better. Something built from truth, from loss, from choices that couldn't be undone. And in that quiet, ordinary moment, they didn't have everything, but they had something real. And this time, they weren't going to lose it. So, that's how the story ends. And if you're still here with me right now, really still here, then I believe something in this story touched your heart in a quiet, personal way. Maybe it was Claire's strength. Maybe it was Adrian's change. Or maybe it was the reminder that life doesn't always give us perfect people, only chances to become better ones. You see, one of the deepest lessons in this story is this. Real change doesn't come from comfort, it comes from consequence. As Marcus Aurelius once said, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." Pain, loss, regret, they are not the end. They are the beginning, if we choose to face them honestly. Adrian didn't become a better man because he wanted to. He became better because he was forced to see the truth about himself. And Claire, she reminds us of something even more powerful. Self-respect is not loud, it's quiet. It's choosing dignity, even when no one is watching. So maybe today, instead of asking, "Why did this happen to me?" we ask, "What is this trying to teach me?" Because healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means growing beyond the version of ourselves that was once broken. And hey, If this story stayed with you, even just a little, go ahead, like the video, share it with someone who might need it, and subscribe to the channel. You never know. The next story might be the one someone needs to hear the most. This story is a work of fiction created for entertainment and emotional storytelling purposes. While it is inspired by real-life themes such as relationships, personal growth, and overcoming hardship, the characters, events, and situations are not intended to represent any specific real individuals or actual events. The narrative is designed to reflect realistic emotions and life lessons, but certain details have been dramatized to enhance engagement and deliver a meaningful message. Any resemblance to real persons, living or dead, or real situations is purely coincidental. The goal of this content is to provide viewers with a relatable and thought-provoking experience, encouraging reflection on personal values, resilience, and the importance of accountability, rather than to present factual or verified real-world events.